Hello there, Jessica Ortner here. I'm a New York Times bestselling author, and as you obviously know, I love tapping. And if you are here, it's probably because you also love tapping. I think what's so amazing about this community is we attract people who want to better their life with tapping, but not only that, they want to help others. And that's what our time together is all about, how we can help others, how we can create a career for ourselves that we love, being of service to others, where we can have more flexibility in our lives, when we can improve our own lives through the process. So we are going to be learning about EFT certification. We're going to be answering all of your questions. We have a text box below, so let us know if you have questions during this conversation. And even if we don't get to them right away, we will make sure that someone gets to your question. So today I have the pleasure to speak to a dear friend of mine, Dr. Dawson Church. Now, I have known Dawson since 2008, and you might hear that laugh. It's one of my favorite sounds is Dawson's laugh. This is what I can tell you about Dawson. I'll read his professional bio, but before I do that, I want you to know, almost the way I'm looking at this is like one friend to another, is Dawson has one of the biggest hearts. He is a man of integrity. He's a man of passion. Everything he does is to serve others. And everybody he trains, he does that because he wants to have this ripple effect on the world of helping others. And even before we started recording, he said to me, Jess, let's pause for a second. Let's really create our intention that we're attracting the right people. Because this isn't for everybody, but there are people out there that have the right heart for this, that want to better their lives with a great career, and they want to help other people. So let's talk to them. And I just loved that he created that energy even before we started. He set out that intention. So with that, let me tell you a bit about Dawson. This is the formal introduction. So you might know of him already. He is the founder of the National Institute of Integrative Healthcare, or NIIH, and he's the author of the best-selling books Genie in Your Genes and Bliss Brain. Dawson has shared the stage with some top transformers like Joe Dispenza and Marianne Williamson and Tony Robbins and Jack Canfield. The NIIH's largest program is the Veterans Stress Project, which offers free tapping sessions to over 22,000 veterans with PTSD. Now, he has truly driven this. He's driven by this passion of helping these veterans, these people with these big hearts who are suffering, to really get results, to reclaim their lives. He also has been the primary investigator in over 20 scientific studies of energy psychology. Twice he has been invited to testify before U.S. congressional committees. As the CEO of EFT Universe, he manages the largest EFT training and certification organization in the world, training over 5,000 practitioners over the last few years. There's more to this. This man is amazing. Another thing, Dawson's training has set such a high standard, and we're going to go deeper into this, but he has such a high standard, and EFT training is accredited for continued medical education for doctors through the American Medical Association, psychologists through the American Psychological Association, and nurses through the American Nurses Credentialing Commission. So he's played a really big role bringing energy therapies into primary care settings like the Veterans Administration. And for more than 10 years, the tapping solution has been one of the biggest donors to his work, because we are seeing how his research is opening the door. It's helping so many people. It's helping reach people who might not have access to this on their own. So I'm truly grateful to have him here. Whew, Dawson, I did it. You are so impressive. It's like reading your bio. There's so much to say. Thank you so much for being with us, first of all.
Oh, it's a joy, Jessica. And, having that sense of joy and mission and fulfillment and purpose through it all, it's like, it's not what you do, it's the spirit with which you do it. And so doing all those things, and also just being in that place of feeling the exuberance, the love, the joy every day, waking up every morning so enthusiastic. You can't wait to just leap into the day and do what you feel called to do with your life. So it's great to be here. Also just interfacing with you and Nick and the Tapping Solution for, dare I say it, more than 15 years now.
Wow.
Seems like yesterday. I can remember setting up to shoot scenes from the Tapping Solution movie with you all those years ago. And who would have thought that we'd be where we are here today? And we've worked together so beautifully over that time, like the outreach you guys do through the Tapping Solution, through the Tapping World Summit, that nobody else can do, nobody else has been able to do. And so I just love supporting you, supporting the app. I did the first clinical trial of the Tapping Solution app, and that's really helped leverage the app and give it credibility in the medical community. I can go in and talk to doctors and psychiatrists now, and I can say, look at the results of the study in the U.S. national government's database here of research, and this is what it shows. And it's like, okay, this stuff really does work. This is for real. So it's been wonderful to have this warm friendship and the sense of complementarity and support over the years.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same. I'm so grateful to have met you. And for me personally, it's felt like I've had this front row seat to how tapping has evolved. And it's changed a lot. From when we started 15 years ago, there wasn't this body of research and science-based evidence. And so there were a lot of doors that were closed. And now more and more, I hear nurses are using it. I hear psychologists are now bringing it into their practice. There's so many doors opening, and I know one of the biggest reasons that is happening is because of the research that you have led. Can you tell us a bit about the research and the impact that you've seen it have on the community at large?
You know, I'll tell you a story from those early days, 2008, when we first met. And before that, there wasn't really much in the way of research. And one of the reasons was that Roger Callahan really popularized tapping with his 1985 book called The 5-Minute Phobia Cure. And Callahan would say, and other people after Callahan would say, look, just tap. You'll feel the difference. You don't need research. And of course, if you do tap, you do feel the difference, and you don't need a guy with a microscope to tell you that you feel much better. So they were right in that sense. But imagine what I would tell those early advocates, very enthusiastic people in EFT. What would happen if you went to go and get an operation and the surgeon said, and you asked about the research behind the surgery you were about to get, and the surgeon said, oh, there's no research, but I read up on the internet how good this is. You'd make it about turn and run right out of that surgery ward and not want to be worked on, because anecdotes are great. We need data. And I remember back in 2008, the very first credible study I did was called the Healthcare Workers Study. And I was doing one-day workshops at healthcare workers conferences. So doctors and nurses and chiropractors and others I was working with them usually for a day at a workshop, measuring anxiety, depression, pain, and other symptoms before and after. And Jessica, I was working with the University of Arizona, and they were actually tabulating and analyzing the data. And I remember when the first batch of data came back analyzed from the University of Arizona, and I looked at it on my computer. I'm getting chills, actually, as I say this right now, because I'm staring, of course, at a screen. I remember staring at the screen that day and looking at the numbers and getting really pissed off, because I realized clearly they had made an error in their calculations. They were showing a 45% drop in anxiety and depression in one-day workshop, which I knew was totally impossible. So I emailed them back and said, oh, there's clearly an error in your data here. I mean, 45% drop in one day of tapping? I don't think so. You guys clearly have a statistical glitch over here in your calculation. So please rerun this and then give me the real numbers. And they emailed me back and said, Dr. Church, those are the real numbers. That's what really happened. And I remember being stunned, Jessica. And after that, I went out with so much confidence, because now we didn't have just, it feels good in my body. Now we had actual measurements of data. Same thing with the Tapping Solution app. We found, when we measured the Tapping Solution app, we found a 40+% drop in symptoms of stress and anxiety in just the session they were doing on the app, which was often only about 10 or 15 minutes. So very, very brief sessions, really big drops in symptoms. Now we know that that's possible, but back then we didn't. Then what was performed after that was what are called replication trials. And replications are so important. That's when an independent research team tries to replicate the results of another team's work and see if they can get the same results. Because, if you can boil one pot of water and it boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit or 100 degrees centigrade, and you boil a second pot, the boiling point of water is pretty stable after you've done it 10 times. With science, though, a lot of key studies, there's been this what they call a replication crisis in science, that scientists cannot replicate each other's work, even in important drug trials like cancer and Alzheimer's drug trials. And in one famous group of replications that were attempted over 10 years by a giant pharmaceutical company called Amgen, they could only replicate about 10% of the studies. So now with EFT, we have replications for cortisol, lowering your cortisol. We have replications for phobias, for making phobias go away, for anxiety, for depression, for PTSD. Often we have multiple replications, so we know that this really works. And so what I then did was I wanted to not only have evidence and data and replicability, I wanted to have consistency of training. So in 2008, 2009, I got together all the experts in the EFT field, and we defined something, and we called it Clinical EFT. Because up to that point, people were tapping up here and calling it EFT, and imagining tapping and calling it EFT, and there was just all this inconsistency in the method. And of course, then if we'd done studies of inconsistent methods, we would have been comparing apples to oranges. So we made sure there was one consistent standard. I call that Clinical EFT. There are 48 methods. And if you learn just the basic recipe and you learn the movie technique, all you've learned is 9 of those 48 methods. So we made sure we defined all 48 methods, and then we train people. We train them in this totally consistent method. And we know that if they follow the method, they are highly likely to get the results. And we just see in this training program over and over again, if they do this, they get the results. So that was led to things like Kaiser Permanente publishing practice guidelines in their journal. Kaiser is a giant healthcare system in the US. They have about 15 million people. The VA, after many attempts to get them to look at EFT, eventually they approved EFT as a generally safe therapy in 2017. We've had many groups now in the Cleveland Clinic, in Johns Hopkins, Columbia Presbyterian Medical Center. We've had EFT now being practiced or presented in many different parts of the US, and in fact all over the world. A very, very recent examination of non-US research found that there are 94 studies of EFT published in non-English language journals, in Turkish, in Tagalog, in the Philippines, in all kinds of different countries. There's EFT research going on. So tons of it is happening. And we make sure that when we train people, we're training them in this evidence-based method called Clinical EFT. So we've now gone full circle from feeling good to consistency to research to replications to training. And when you get trained in Clinical EFT, it works.
Yes. Yeah. And through all the years of doing this moment feels like the best time to be trained. If there's someone new to this field who wants to get trained, it is the moment, because we have the research there. The doors are opening that weren't open even 5 years ago. I'm seeing like every year makes a significant difference. You kind of answered this question already, but I want to ask it again so we can go deeper into this. We know tapping works. We know that you could use the app and gain benefit. Why would someone need training?
Yeah, good question. So a lot of EFT you can do yourself. Use the Tapping Solution app and you will feel the difference right away. You can just be in the middle of a personal crisis and not have access to any kind of outside resource, the app or a practitioner, and you can tap on yourself and do well. The reason that people need training and the reason that people using EFT need a practitioner is that you will hit areas that you can't work on yourself. So, for example, if you're working with psychological trauma, we definitely recommend you tap with a trained practitioner. Don't go and try and work on psychological trauma, especially childhood trauma yourself. You're likely to get flooded, overwhelmed. It's just too much. You need the support of a trained professional. And then if you're working with a long-standing problem, we find that people are able to deal with all kinds of minor problems tapping by themselves. It's an easy method. It takes 2 minutes to do a round of tapping. It doesn't take very long. And so that minor annoyance you run into, you have a fender bender. I had a fender bender last year, and it's like, tap one round and your emotions down at a low level. So all those minor annoyances of life, we can tap on ourselves. The major things in life, especially when you've not been able to master them over and over and over again, you need someone to tap with. Just for example, weight loss is a major area like this. People, I've noticed even in tapping, people tend to struggle with weight loss because they have persistent issues. You go work with a practitioner who's worked with hundreds of clients with weight loss, who's been trained in clinical EFT, then you're going straight for the most effective methods. If you have a repetitive pattern in relationships, some people are sabotaging relationship after relationship. Don't try and stumble through yourself. Go work with a trained professional. If you have a money issue, like there was one lady in one of my workshops who was a really successful social worker and had several social entrepreneurial projects, made a lot of money and lost it, made a lot more money and lost that. And so she really asked herself, I've been tapping for all these years. I'm a professional. What is it behind my pattern of self-sabotage where I can't hold on to the money I have? And it took working with a practitioner to show even this practitioner what to go do. So with major things, repetitive things, go work with somebody. With trauma, definitely work with somebody. And so you need, if you are becoming a practitioner, you need training to do that. You need to know when, for example, you have a client with dissociation. Dissociation means that the client's mentally and emotionally checked out. They aren't there. What do? You say, feel your feelings. They say, I can't feel anything because they can't. They dissociate. What do you do in that case? You need to be trained for that. What if you are working with a person and they flash into a terrifying birth trauma event, and now they're re-experiencing part of their birth that was really traumatic, or pre-birth. Many people have pre-birth memories, some of them not being wanted, for example. My mother tried to have an abortion, and it didn't work. It was unsuccessful, and that's how I came into the world. You definitely need special training to work with the things you'll encounter in people's lives. Simple stuff anyone can do, but get a little bit deeper, and you need professionals. And if you are a professional, if you're a coach or a therapist, you don't have to be a licensed therapist. You can be a coach, and that's good enough. But again, you need training in dealing with all of those things. You need all 48 of those clinical EFT techniques.
Mm-hmm. I want to rewind a little bit. You mentioned that there was the woman who saw this sabotaging pattern. She would make money and she would lose it. So here she is taking an EFT certification, probably with the intention to help others and improve her business. And now she's getting this personal benefit that I don't know if she even expected. So is that a big part of the training as well, that people personally go through transformations?
Well, we began to wonder about that question. So the way I answered it was I did research. And so we'd have people go through a whole battery of psychological questionnaires before and after an EFT workshop. And we found huge shifts in anxiety, depression, PTSD, physical pain. They were dropping dramatically in their levels of physical pain. And then I thought, what about cortisol? And so we found that their levels of cortisol dropped a lot. And that study, and you can look this up on the US government's database, is called PubMed, PubMed. So just go to pubmed.gov.government, pubmed.gov. So all the top journals in the US and actually in the world are on that database. And then type in my name, Dawson Church, you'll find this particular study. And we looked at cortisol, we looked at immune levels, we looked at blood pressure, we looked at heart rate. Like, for example, your blood pressure and your heart rate are pretty good proxy for general health. If your heart rate's within a certain range for your age, then doctors will look at that and know you're generally healthy. Same thing with blood pressure. And so we found that people had a significant drop in blood pressure during our training workshop. They had a significant lowering of their heart rate. So when they came in the first day, their heart rates were about average. After the week of training, their heart rates looked like those of an elite athlete, somebody who's really a great athlete who has a really strong heart. So they didn't do any workouts other than a whole lot of tapping on the side of the hand and the other point. So yeah, we've done the research, and it has real benefits for the people. And so that's what we call it, borrowing benefits. And you borrow benefits from those you work around. You borrow benefits while you're in a workshop, and you wind up after the workshop again with lower cortisol and a much bigger immune response.
I think that's so important to highlight, because I can imagine there might be some people who are interested in certification, but maybe they have a job, a career already, and they don't know if they want to make the complete switch. They don't know exactly how they want to incorporate it into the work they're doing. It almost doesn't matter, because you can go for the benefit for yourself and then let the rest of that unfold, knowing at the very least you're going to be feeling better, you're going to be happier, your body's going to be responding better. So I love knowing that. I think it gives people some kind of comfort that they don't need all the business answers yet in order to attend and start this journey. That being said, let's get into the business of it, right? So this is an investment. Some people want to have this be their primary career or to incorporate it into what they're already doing. What can they expect to earn? Tell us a bit about the business side of it.
Sure. Well, what we find as a pattern is that people start to establish a practice as they're going through certification. So you would think that you would go through certification, get certified, and then start a business. But we require, as part of your education, we require you to work with a mentor and actually work with other people. And then the mentor is going to comment on your cases. This is so valuable to have an experienced mentor literally watching or reading your case histories and giving you feedback and training you on how to work with other people. And what tends to happen as you work with 3 people, 5 people, 10 people, as you're getting certified, those people are getting the benefits of tapping. And so they don't want to go after they worked with you during the certification process. They become your clients. So virtually all of the people in the certification program actually wind up building a practice. It takes about a year to get certified. People can, if they want to dash through it, they can do it in less, like 6 months. But we recommend you just do it at a reasonable pace, a year. And then you'll wind up working with practice clients during the year. Those people will become your actual clients as you graduate. They'll tell their friends. We had one of our graduates we were just asking her about her experience of getting clients. She said, I know I really should have a website. I've been wanting to set up a website. I've written the copy. I've got a designer. I just haven't had time because I've been so busy working with clients. So she's building a website to get clients, and it's like, duh, okay, well, you aren't building a website. Why? Because I have so many clients.
That is great. So tell us a bit. Actually, I want to pause for a quick second. For those who are watching, keep asking your questions below. Let us know what is standing out. I'm also curious what brought you here. Is this something that you want to do because you're looking to support yourself? Are you looking to build a business? Let me know a little bit. Let us know a little bit about yourself, because we love to read the comments. So Dawson, you've already shared that it's a year program. Can you tell a little bit more about the structure of it?
Yeah, so initially we have you take online courses, and these are set up in something called a learning management system, or LMS. And so most of the big top ranked colleges use LMSs now to deliver content. So it's like being enrolled in a college course. So if you wind up phoning and talking to somebody from our organization, they're called an admissions advisor, like you're going to college. So you're thinking of this like a 1-year college course. And your initial classes are all in that format. The very first one you take is called the Genetics of personal transformation. It's based on my book, The Genie in Your Genes. It's all about epigenetics and how our genes are literally changing when we tap. And that drop in cortisol that people experience during the workshop is because the genes that code for cortisol are being dialed down, and there's a rise in immunity because the genes that code for immunity are being dialed up. So you learn what's going on physiologically inside your clients right in the very beginning of the course. So you take 4 of these modules. You also take one on ethics, which is really important because when you're working with other people, again, you're working in their energy body, you're working on their most traumatic memories sometimes. You need to have a very clear sense of boundaries. You need to be able to handle things like emotional flooding. If people are really going deep into their emotions, maybe they're unlocking their emotions for the first time in their lives. So we give you really clear ethical boundaries and guidelines on how to do all that. And so we take a course in that. You take a course in coaching psychology and all the best techniques from coaching that have been researched over the last 50 or 70 years, also how it affects the brains of the people you're working with. So when you're working with people, you're seeing shifts in their language, in their respiration, in their level of physical tension, but you will know after taking those science courses, that deep breath means their vagal nerve is turning on, and that their relaxation response and their parasympathetic relaxation part of the nervous system is dialing up. So you'll know what's going on with the client, and you'll be trained to read the signs. You'll know what's going on with their genes, what's going on with their brain waves, what's going on with their nervous systems. And it really is powerful to have our practitioners view those client interactions through the lens of science. So you learn all of that, and then you take a 4-day workshop. And that's when you mentioned that many people take the workshop just for their own personal benefit. They aren't getting certified. They just take a 4-day workshop. And those are virtual. Some of them are live. They're live at places like Omega and Esalen and Kripalu, but they're also virtual. So you can take a virtual one or a live one if you'd like to. And so you take a virtual workshop and you learn about these things now with other people, either virtually or in person. And then you work with a mentor. And that mentor is literally sitting with you one-to-one, and they're observing you and they're steering you, guiding you in becoming an expert practitioner and reflecting on your work. I did this, you'll tell your mentor. I took this session in this direction with this client for this reason. And the mentor might say, well done. And what other directions might you have gone in? And you'll just explore. Maybe there are 3 directions you could have gone in. No right or wrong. But that mentor is going to help you really evaluate the best possible course. Because part of you, Jessica, during a session, if you're a practitioner, you're really engaged with the client. I tend to forget about everything else, time, space. I'm just so energetically and emotionally enmeshed with that client. But there's also part of you, your thinking brain back here, that's the witness, that's the observer, and thinking, okay, is this too much? Or is it not enough? Like, I remember I worked with one woman. I was invited to keynote the National Eating Disorders Association, and they had me work with people live on stage. So I was doing this in front of a huge audience and working with a woman, and she got in touch with a really deep childhood trauma where her father had been abusive. Her mother left and was living with her stepdad. And she just had these memories of living with her mom and then her mom's new boyfriend. And it was just a lot of violence. One time the father just broke the door down, ran in there, punched the boyfriend out, grabbed the kids and drove in his pickup truck. So, really, really traumatic events in this woman's early life. And so I could see the whole audience becoming triggered. They were all tapping, and they were triggered by this really violent story from this woman's childhood. This woman was also the director of psychiatry at a major hospital. And we find that many professionals in the field have not really dealt with their trauma at the body level. And so she was working on this. And then finally, after the tapping session, She just came out of it. She was smiling. She was happy. And then I did this deliberately in front of this big audience of medical professionals. I invited her to go deep into it again. Now, everyone in the audience thought I was really making a mistake because she'd just gone through that memory emotionally and emerged the other side. Now I'm taking her back to think about more of the details of what happened in the event, during the event. And so they were thinking, why is Dawson doing this? Because it's just got her out of this deep emotional experience. I was doing it to help her go and clear up the lost pieces of it, because I could see there were parts there she hadn't really cleared. I wanted her to get in touch with them while it was still fresh in her mind. So she went deeply back into it and then came out again. And so you have to make that decision. Is it the right time to invite the client to go even deeper into their trauma, or is this enough for the day? And you're making those evaluations. So that's that little evaluative witness side that's saying, what do I do in this case? And you become very wise at doing that as you get mentored, as you do your cases for certification, and you really know effectively how to guide people at that point.
Yeah, that mentorship is essential. I think it's very, very difficult to excel at anything without having a mentor. And I think oftentimes people sign up for certification programs and then they feel a bit lost, right? It's one thing knowing something. It's another thing being able to practice it and learn it at a different level and have someone guide you. So I think that's just so wonderful that you've set it up that way.
Dana, just to interrupt here, when I did my certifications, I got certified in Gestalt therapy back along the road, and I got certified in energy psychology, and I got certified in various things at different times. And, when I signed up for a program, I'd pay my $5,000 or whatever it was to do the program. And then I would just have to figure it out myself. I'd be up to me. I'd have to motivate myself. I'd have to figure out what the next steps were. And there was no one to really help me with all of that. So with EFT Universe, right in the very beginning in 2009, 2010, I said, we're not going to be like that. We're going to do this as a community. We're going to support people in going through the program. And we don't want them to sign up for certification. We want them to complete certification. So we created a community. We have a Facebook group that meets regularly. We have a lot of community events, skills practice calls. We get together with other students and look at difficult cases. We have that mentorship model. We have our events. We have an ongoing community after certification, after graduation. So community is really part of this, and you go through it as a group. So certification enrollment begins. It's open for a week or two. It ends. We then go through it over the next year as a group. And the kind of bonding and kind of support that people get during that is totally wonderful. But we keep you on track. Your ment keeps you on track. The whole system keeps you on track. And we make sure we're not going to push you or try and move you along faster than you're comfortable. But we're going to make sure you do stay on track and that you do graduate if at all possible.
Yes, that you have the support you need. That's so essential. Dawson, can you tell us a bit about the financial investment?
Yeah, so the financial investment is trivial compared to the benefits to you and your income after that. We also have various plans where we will credit you for certain prior things you've done, like certain prior certifications. So if you just talk to an admissions advisor or go to our page, you will see exactly what the costs are at each of those levels. So come prepared with what you've done before, previous certifications, previous classes. Some of those things count and the cost is variable depending on that. So just look at the bottom of the page. It has both one single payment plans, multiple payment plans, and also all of those things that qualify for discounts.
I mean, if you are thinking about it, do it. I mean, it's so incredible that you're doing this. And I will say, I know I mentioned this before, but I love that before we recorded, you were like, I want to bring in the right people. So if you kind of feel that feeling that this is right for you, explore it, ask questions, learn more. Dawson, any other final thoughts?
Make sure you read the frequently asked questions at the bottom of the enrollment page, because they'll answer pretty much every question you'd have. There, for example, there are scholarships available for people who are veterans and family members of veterans. There are all kinds, there are questions like, if I finished my year and my year's up and I'm still not complete with the course, what do I do? And the answer is we will give you an automatic 6-month extension. So there all of those questions answered at the bottom of the page. So read through that. We're happy to talk to you in person, make an appointment with you. And when you're on the phone with an admissions advisor, that'll just help you figure out if this is right for you. If it's not right for you, there's no pressure, there's no obligation. And if it is right for you, you'll know. One of the things I ask people, Jessica, when I see them at live workshops is I'm curious, why did you choose to become a certified EFT practitioner? And usually it's just that they knew it was right for them. Maybe they've been working in a profession that doesn't really give them a sense of fulfillment. Maybe they want to set their own hours. Maybe they just want to make money as well doing something they love. Because if you're, when I got into EFT, like 2002, 2003, there were a lot of poor practitioners. And people just had a poverty mentality. I'm not as good as a psychologist, or I'm not as good as a certified life coach. Now, our people are getting paid at that level. They're going and working in professional organizations. They're working at a clinic, they're working at a hospital, and many of them are making substantial salaries doing that. Others are starting a private practice, and they're making, maybe they'll start at, say, $100 an hour. Many of them are double that within a few years. And like one practitioner I knew back then, 2008, I just did a tapping session with her. She said, "Dawson, I'm so nervous. I'm charging people $65 an hour. And I'm worried that if I raise my rate to $75 an hour, I'm going to lose all my clients." We tapped on that. Even though I'm worried, if I raise my rate to $75 an hour, I'll lose all my clients. I deeply and completely accept myself. So I was tapping on her on that in 2008. Jessica, I went to her website a while back, and I noticed, A, she has a waiting list, so she's full. You have to wait several months to get to work with her. B, she's charging $350 an hour after now 15 plus years later. So people do make a really good living, and I no longer find that poverty consciousness among people in our profession. They will talk to a doctor as a fellow healing professional. We'll train you how to do that in the course of some of the work you do for EFT certification. And they'll expect that people will pay them well. And what is more valuable than the kind of deep healing that EFT offers? So that is a problem we used to have as EFT practitioners. We don't have it anymore. I'm just delighted to see people making money, and they're making money doing what they absolutely, passionately love. So that's the big shift that's happened in the last few years.
That's amazing. That's amazing, Dawson. Well, thank you so much for your time. Any final thoughts that you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I'd say that if you have doubts about doing this, but your heart is calling you, if you're feeling that just urge to live a fulfilling life, to wake up happy every day, to see the light that goes on in someone's eyes when, say, for example, they've been dealing with, if it's, say, a young person, they've been dealing with anorexia or bulimia, and then they tap and all of that anxiety goes away. Or maybe you're working with an elderly veteran, or maybe you're working with somebody who's sick in hospital, and you see just all of the regret dropping away, all the trauma dropping away. The feeling of doing that is just indescribable. You feel you're doing valuable work in the world and on earth with your life, with the lifetime you have. And also, you feel wonderful physically. You feel so much better. Like, I know I used to do energy healing before I learned EFT, and I didn't do it professionally. I would do it occasionally, like for special events. And I do an event. People would have a fabulous time doing the energy healing, but at the end of the day, I felt depleted. With EFT, I feel fantastic after a day of tapping with other people. So you're going to feel wonderful yourself. the ripple effects will spread out among your community. You'll find your children, your parents, your friends, everyone around you starts to benefit from you being trained in this. So all of those things are what you get in exchange. And then you can make a great living. So you step right out of certification into a career. We have a website. It's one of the most popular websites on the internet for alternative medicine. We have a practitioner listing there that gets tens of thousands of visitors a month. We have our stress solution app and website where people can tap and get on-demand sessions. You can list yourself there the day you graduate. So you're stepping into a well-paid career. And the days of thinking you had to sacrifice a great living for doing what you loved are long behind us. And so I encourage you to see, if your heart's telling you to do this, and then if you have any fears, any doubts, get the facts, talk to people, and do some tapping to release it. Release any obstacles in your own mind or in your subconscious to claiming a truly wonderful life and future and profession for yourself. So thanks again for sharing this, Jessica. And I know we will be touching the right people, and the right people will hear us and answer that call.
I truly believe that too. Thank you, Dawson.